Commander Krixvel had seen enough death in his 43 cycles of military service to fill a small moon, but nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for the sight of Research Station Omega-7 dissolving like sugar in acid rain. The massive titanium steel structure, built to withstand asteroid impacts and solar flares, was being methodically torn apart by creatures that shouldn't exist outside of fever dreams and military horror simulations. "Sir, we've lost contact with the evacuation shuttles," Lieutenant Brix reported, her voice cracking through the static of their emergency communication array. The things got to them before they could reach minimum safe distance." Krixvel's mandibles clicked together in the Zeltharian equivalent of grinding teeth. Through the reinforced viewing port of his command vessel, he watched as another section of the research station simply vanished. Not exploded, not collapsed, vanished, as if reality itself had decided that particular chunk of metal and ceramic no longer deserved to exist. "How many?" he asked, though part of him didn't want to know. 47 researchers, 12 security personnel, and 6 maintenance staff, Brix replied, her tentacles drooping with exhaustion. "All gone in less than 20 minutes. The creatures responsible for this massacre moved through the debris field with terrifying grace. Each one was roughly the size of a small cargo hauler, their bodies covered in what appeared to be living armor that shifted between deep purple and silver, depending on the angle of the light. 6 powerful legs ended in claws that could apparently slice through anything the Galactic Council had ever invented, and their heads, well, their heads featured enough teeth to stock a dental supply warehouse for the next century. "Magnificent killing machines," whispered Science Officer Trixcole from his position at the sensor array. There was something uncomfortably close to admiration in his voice. "Look at their coordination, their tactical awareness. They're not just destroying randomly. They're systematically dismantling every piece of technology they encounter." "Magnificent?" Krixvel's voice rose to a pitch that made his translator unit squeal in protest. "They just consumed 65 sentient beings. They've destroyed 3 research stations in the past month. They've turned the entire Kepler 442 system into a no-fly zone for civilian traffic." "Yes, but observe their movement patterns," Trixcole continued, apparently oblivious to his commander's growing rage. "They're learning. Each attack is more sophisticated than the last. These creatures adapt to our defenses faster than we can implement new ones." That was the part that kept Krixvel awake during his sleep cycles. The first attack on Research Station Alpha had been brutal, but straightforward. The creatures had simply overwhelmed the facility through sheer force. The second attack on Station Beta showed tactical thinking. They'd disabled the power grid first, then the communications array, then systematically worked their way through the defensive systems. This third attack demonstrated something that chilled him to his core. Patience. The creatures had waited. They'd observed the evacuation protocols, learned the escape routes, and positioned themselves to intercept the fleeing personnel. That level of strategic planning suggested intelligence that rivaled most spacefaring species. "Sir," Brix interrupted his dark thoughts, "we're receiving a priority transmission from Galactic Council Central Command." "Put it through." The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the imposing figure of Admiral Vorth Prime, his forearms crossed in a gesture that universally translated to, "Someone is about to have a very bad day." "Commander Krixvel," the Admiral's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "I trust you have a comprehensive report on the latest incident." "Yes, sir." The creatures struck at 0347 Standard Time. Station Omega-7 was completely destroyed within 22 minutes. No survivors. Unacceptable. Admiral Vorth Prime's secondary arms began the rhythmic tapping that indicated he was accessing multiple data streams simultaneously. This situation has escalated beyond a regional threat. These creatures are disrupting trade routes, terrorizing civilian populations, and making the Galactic Council look incompetent. Krixvel wisely chose not to point out that the Council's response to the crisis had, in fact, been spectacularly incompetent. "Sir, with respect, our conventional weapons have proven ineffective against their natural armor. Our energy weapons seem to actually make them stronger. And our attempts at orbital bombardment." He paused, remembering the embarrassing incident where the creatures had somehow reflected a plasma cannon blast back at the attacking ship. Well, let's just say they didn't go according to plan. Which is why, Admiral Vorth Prime continued with the tone of someone revealing a particularly unpleasant surprise. The Council has authorized the deployment of a specialist. The word specialist hung in the air like a bad smell in a recycling unit. What kind of specialist? Crixvel asked, though he suspected he didn't want to know. A human. The bridge fell silent, except for the gentle hum of life support systems and the distant sound of Trixcole choking on his nutrient paste. Human, sir? Brix's voice had climbed to a frequency that was probably causing discomfort to every Zeltharian within a 3-kilometer radius. Dr. Iris Blackstone, Admiral Vorth Prime read from his display. Terran Federation's leading expert on, and I quote, large, dangerous, and misunderstood creatures. Crixvel felt his stomach perform what humans would probably call a loop-de-loop. Humans had a reputation throughout the galaxy for being simultaneously brilliant and completely insane. Their approach to problem-solving typically involved either excessive amounts of explosives or ideas so ridiculous that they somehow worked through sheer audacity. Sir, no disrespect to Dr. Blackstone, but these creatures have proven immune to every weapon in our arsenal. What exactly does the Council expect one human to accomplish? Admiral Vorth Prime's expression suggested he'd been asking himself the same question. According to her file, Dr. Blackstone has successfully resolved 17 different impossible situations involving dangerous alien species. Her methods are unconventional. Unconventional how? That's classified. She'll be arriving on your ship within 6 hours. Your orders are to provide her with whatever resources she requires and to follow her recommendations, no matter how. The Admiral paused, clearly searching for the right word. Unusual they might seem. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge crew in stunned silence. Well, Trixcole said eventually, this should be interesting. Interesting was not the word Crixvel would have chosen. Catastrophic, maybe. Apocalyptic, certainly. But not interesting. 6 hours later, as he waited in the docking bay for Dr. Blackstone's arrival, Crixvel found himself reviewing everything he knew about humans. They were relatively new to galactic civilization, having achieved faster-than-light travel only about 2 centuries ago. They were bipedal, carbon-based, and possessed an alarming tendency to form emotional attachments to things that were trying to kill them. Their homeworld was a Class M planet, with gravity slightly higher than galactic standard, which might explain their unusual physical resilience and their even more unusual mental resilience. What worried him most was their reputation for what they called thinking outside the box. In Crixvel's experience, human solutions to problems often involved redefining what the problem actually was, usually in ways that made everyone else very uncomfortable. The airlock hissed open, and Dr. Iris Blackstone stepped aboard his ship. She was not what he'd expected. For one thing, she was small. Humans were generally considered to be medium-sized by galactic standards, but Dr. Blackstone couldn't have been more than 1.6 meters tall. She had short, dark hair that looked like she'd been running her fingers through it, and she wore a simple jumpsuit that had seen better decades. Most surprisingly, she was carrying what appeared to be a large bag filled with toys? Commander Crixvel? Her voice was pleasant, with the kind of casual warmth that suggested she was completely unaware of the magnitude of the crisis she'd been called to address. I'm Iris. Thanks for picking me up. Sorry about the delay. Had to make a stop at the supply depot. Dr. Blackstone, Crixvel began formally. Welcome aboard the Starfire. I trust your journey was... Oh, please, just call me Iris. And yes, the trip was fine, thanks. She hefted her bag and grinned. So, where are these babies everyone's so worked up about? Crixvel's translator unit made a sound like a dying computer. Babies? The Kythara cubs. That's what we're dealing with, right? Young Kythara who've been separated from their parents and don't know how to behave properly. The bridge crew exchanged glances that ranged from confused to horrified. Dr. Iris, Brix said carefully. These creatures have destroyed 3 research stations and killed over 200 people. They're not exactly what most species would consider babies. Iris tilted her head in a gesture that somehow managed to convey both curiosity and the kind of patience usually reserved for explaining basic mathematics to particularly slow students. How old do you estimate they are? Age? Trix Cole's voice cracked. What does age have to do with anything? Oh, quite a bit, actually. Iris's smile was the kind that suggested she knew something everyone else didn't. See, I've been reviewing your sensor data during the trip here. Very thorough documentation, by the way. Particularly enjoyed the part where you tried to use sonic deterrence on them. She paused, letting the silence stretch just long enough to become uncomfortable. The thing is, she continued, those killing machines of yours are approximately 4 to 7 months old. In human terms, that makes them toddlers. The bridge fell silent. Not the comfortable silence of contemplation, but the heavy, oppressive silence that usually preceded either enlightenment or complete mental breakdown. Impossible, Trix Cole breathed. The creatures are over 15 meters in length. They possess natural armor that deflects our most powerful weapons, acidic saliva that can dissolve starship hulls, and bite force measurements that exceed our testing equipment's maximum range. Yes, Iris agreed cheerfully. Adorable, isn't it? The silence stretched even further. I'm sorry, Crixvell said slowly. Did you just describe creatures capable of dissolving research stations as adorable? Well, of course they are. Iris's expression suggested this should be obvious to anyone with functioning brain cells. They're babies. All babies are adorable. Even the ones that could theoretically eat you. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small device that projected a 3-dimensional hologram. The image that appeared made half the bridge crew recoil in instinctive terror. The Kythara cub was indeed massive for an infant, easily the size of a shuttlecraft. Its hide was a deep purple that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. 6 legs ending in claws that could slice through diamond supported a body that was all predatory grace and barely contained power. Its head featured a mouth filled with multiple rows of teeth that dripped with the acidic compound that had destroyed so many facilities. It was also, undeniably, playing with what appeared to be a piece of debris from Research Station Beta. Note the behavior, Iris said, manipulating the hologram to show different angles. The creature isn't hunting or feeding. It's engaging in play behavior. See how it bats the object around? How it pounces and retreats? Classic predator-cub development. They're learning motor skills, testing their abilities, exploring their environment. By destroying our research facilities, Brix pointed out with what could only be described as strained patience. Yes, well, babies do tend to break things. Iris shrugged. It's part of how they learn. You can't exactly expect them to understand the difference between a chew toy and a multi-million credit research station, can you? The hologram shifted, showing more footage. This time it displayed multiple cubs working together to systematically dismantle what had been Communications Outpost Delta. And this coordination you mentioned? Iris continued. This tactical intelligence that has everyone so worried? They're playing together, learning social behaviors, building relationships with their siblings. It's actually quite sophisticated development for their age group. Crixvell felt his worldview cracking like an eggshell. You're telling me that the most dangerous threat the galaxy has faced in the past 50 years is a group of children having a play date? A group of very large, very powerful, very confused children who have no idea how to interact appropriately with other species, Iris corrected. Which brings us to your proposed solution. The temperature on the bridge seemed to drop several degrees. Our solution? Crixvell asked, though he suspected he knew where this was heading. Orbital bombardment, if I'm reading the tactical reports correctly, followed by systematic extermination of any survivors. Iris's voice had taken on an edge that could cut through hull plating. Genocide, in other words. They're not people, Trix Cole protested. They're animals. Dangerous, destructive animals. They're children, Iris replied quietly, and something in her tone made every member of the bridge crew take an involuntary step backward. Babies. Infants who don't know any better and are just trying to figure out how the universe works. She took a step forward, her hands clasped behind her back. Now, I don't know how other species handle things, she continued, but humans have very specific feelings about people who want to hurt children. Even children who happen to be 15-meter-long apex predators with acidic saliva. The bridge was so quiet that the soft hum of the life support systems sounded like thunder. "What are you proposing?" Crixvell asked, though he was beginning to suspect that he really didn't want to know. Iris's smile returned, bright and sharp as a plasma blade. "I'm proposing we do what any reasonable species would do when faced with a group of lost, confused children who don't know how to behave properly." She spread her arms wide, and her bag of toys seemed to glow with ominous possibility. "We're going to raise them." The explosion of outrage that followed could probably be heard from the next star system. "Absolutely not." Trixcole's voice reached frequencies that probably violated several interstellar noise ordinances. "You cannot seriously suggest we attempt to domesticate these monsters." "Domesticate?" Iris raised an eyebrow that somehow managed to convey both amusement and mild offense. "Officer, you really don't understand humans at all, do you? We don't domesticate children. We educate them. We nurture them. We teach them the difference between appropriate and inappropriate snack choices." "These are not children." Crixvell's mandibles were clicking so rapidly they sounded like a malfunctioning data processor. "They are biological weapons, living engines of destruction. They've consumed entire research teams." "Well, yes," Iris acknowledged with the sort of casual tone one might use to discuss a minor household accident. "That's what babies do when they're hungry and don't know any better. Have you ever tried feeding them properly?" The question landed like a photon torpedo in the middle of a diplomatic dinner party. "Feed them?" Brix's voice had climbed to a pitch that was probably causing structural damage to nearby equipment. "Feed them what exactly?" "Food, obviously." Iris's patience seemed infinite, which somehow made her even more terrifying. Proper nutrition, age-appropriate portions, maybe some toys that aren't made of expensive research equipment and screaming scientists. Lieutenant Yex-4, who had been quietly monitoring communications from the back of the bridge, suddenly straightened in his chair. "Dr. Blackstone, even if we accepted your theory about these creatures being misguided youngsters, the logistics alone are impossible. They're located in a debris field with no safe approach vectors, and they attack anything that comes within sensor range." Iris's grin widened to proportions that probably violated several laws of physics. "Oh, that's the easy part." She reached into her mysterious bag and pulled out another device. This one projected a hologram so large it filled half the bridge, causing several crew members to duck instinctively. It was a ship, but calling it a ship was like calling a supernova a bright light. This vessel was enormous, easily the size of a small moon, with a hull that seemed to shimmer between different materials and configurations. Parts of it looked like traditional starship construction, but other sections appeared to be made from some sort of biomechanical hybrid that pulsed gently with its own internal rhythm. "Meet the Haven," Iris announced with the pride of a parent showing off baby pictures. "Humanity's first mobile interspecies childcare and education facility. Custom designed for situations exactly like this one." "That," Crixvell said, slowly, "is the most ridiculous thing I have ever witnessed in 4 decades of military service." "Thank you. We're quite proud of it." Iris manipulated the hologram, revealing the ship's interior and cross-section. Fully equipped with adaptive environments for over 400 known species, including several we haven't encountered yet. Variable gravity chambers, atmospheric controls that can simulate any known planetary condition, and a food synthesis system that can produce nutritionally appropriate meals for virtually any biological configuration. The interior was a marvel of engineering and child psychology combined. Vast play areas with equipment that could be reconfigured for different species' physical needs. Learning centers with holographic instructors capable of communicating in thousands of languages and formats. Sleeping quarters that could accommodate everything from microscopic energy beings to creatures the size of small asteroids. "The best part," Iris continued, "is the staff. We've got xenobiologists, child development specialists, nutritionists, and educators from 67 different species. All volunteers. All excited about the opportunity to help shape the next generation of galactic citizens." The human philosophy bricks found her voice first. You built an entire moon-sized starship? For babysitting? For education, Iris corrected gently. For guidance. For showing lost children that the universe is full of potential friends rather than enemies to be eliminated. She paused, her expression growing more serious as she looked around the bridge at the assembled alien faces. You have to understand something about humans, she continued. We have a saying on Earth, it takes a village to raise a child. We believe that every child, regardless of species, size, or potential for accidental destruction, deserves a chance to become something better than their worst impulses suggest. The hologram shifted to show archived footage of human children throughout their development stages, some playing peacefully in groups, others engaged in rougher activities that nonetheless showed clear learning patterns and social development. Human children can be violent, destructive, seemingly impossible to control at times. But we've learned over thousands of years that the answer isn't suppression or elimination. It's patience, understanding, and the unwavering belief that growth and positive change are always possible. Trix Cole's tentacles writhed with barely contained skepticism. But Dr. Blackstone, these creatures aren't human children. They're an entirely different species with completely alien thought processes and biological imperatives. Exactly! Iris's enthusiasm was almost infectious. Which makes this project even more exciting. We're not trying to make them human. We're trying to help them become the best possible version of whatever they're meant to be. She gestured toward the holographic display of the cubs' behavior patterns. Look at their natural instincts. They're protective of their siblings. They work together to solve problems. They show curiosity about their environment. These are the building blocks of a civilized society. They just need guidance to channel those instincts constructively instead of destructively. The practical reality. Yex4 leaned forward in his chair. But what about the immediate danger? Even if your long-term educational approach succeeds, these cubs are causing massive destruction right now. How do you propose to stop the attacks while implementing your unconventional childcare methods? Iris's smile took on a slightly mischievous quality. That's where human psychology meets alien biology in fascinating ways. You see, the cubs aren't attacking because they're inherently evil or malicious. They're attacking because they're bored, hungry, and frustrated. She manipulated the hologram to show a detailed analysis of the cubs' attack patterns. Notice how they always target the most technologically complex structures first? The communication arrays, the power generators, the defensive systems? They're not trying to cause maximum casualties. They're trying to create the most interesting reactions. They want engagement, interaction, stimulation. The implications of this observation settled over the bridge crew like a cold wave. You're saying they're destroying our facilities for entertainment? Crixvel's voice was barely above a whisper. I'm saying they're trying to play with the only toys available in their environment, Iris corrected. Unfortunately, their toys happen to be multi-billion credit research installations filled with living beings. She clicked off the hologram and looked around the bridge with an expression that suggested she was genuinely puzzled by their continued shock. The Haven is currently approaching the outer edge of the Kepler 442 system. My team is running final preparation protocols as we speak. We can begin the integration process within 12 standard hours. Integration? Crixvel seemed to be having difficulty processing basic concepts. You're going to relocate them? Oh yes. Can't properly raise children in a debris field with no atmosphere. Terrible for their social development. The bridge fell into the kind of silence usually reserved for funeral services or tax audits. 12 hours, Trix Cole repeated, his voice hollow with what could only be described as existential dread. You're going to relocate planet-consuming predators in 12 hours. Well, they haven't actually consumed any planets yet, Iris said cheerfully. They're still working on space station demolition. Give them another few years before they graduate to full planetary engineering projects. Crixvel's exoskeleton had taken on a distinctly greenish hue. Dr. Blackstone, even assuming your vessel could somehow contain these creatures without being dissolved from the inside out. How exactly do you propose to convince them to come aboard voluntarily? Iris's expression shifted to something that could power a small space station's energy grid. Oh, that's the fun part. She tapped a communication device, and a voice crackled through with the kind of static that suggested someone was broadcasting from very far away, possibly while dodging something large and aggressive. "Captain Rex Morrison here," the voice announced with the casual confidence of someone who regularly navigated through black holes for entertainment. "We're in position, Doc. The little ones are gathering around our outer hull like it's feeding time at the zoo." "Perfect. Are they responding to the beacon?" "Oh, they're responding all right. Got about 30 of them doing what I can only describe as the galaxy's most terrifying game of follow the leader. The sounds they're making. Doc, it almost seems like singing?" Iris finished. "That's their pack-bonding vocalization. They're curious and excited." Through the communicator came a sound that made every single crew member on the bridge simultaneously reach for their emergency evacuation protocols. It was deep, resonant, and absolutely spine-chilling, like someone had taught a neutron star how to hum lullabies. "Excited," Captain Morrison repeated with admirable composure. "Right. Well, they're definitely excited about something. Hope you know what you're doing, Doc." "Always do, Rex. Initiate Phase 1. The connection ended, leaving the bridge in blessed quiet. Phase 1? Brix's scales had shifted to a color that indicated either extreme nausea or impending cardiac arrest. "What exactly is Phase 1? "Snack time," Iris replied, as if this explained everything perfectly. It didn't. "The first rule of childcare," she continued, apparently oblivious to the collective horror surrounding her, "is that hungry children are cranky children, and cranky children tend to eat things they shouldn't, like research stations and the people inside them." She activated her holographic display again, this time showing a live feed from the Haven. The massive vessel hung in space like a benevolent giant, its hull gleaming in the light of distant stars. Around it, moving with surprising grace for creatures the size of cargo haulers, the Kythara cubs performed what could only be described as an elaborate dance. They swooped and spiraled around the ship in patterns that were almost hypnotic, their acidic trails creating temporary light shows in the vacuum of space. Every few moments one would break from the group to gently nuzzle against the ship's hull, leaving glowing patches that faded slowly back to normal. "They're not trying to dissolve the ship," Trixcole observed with obvious amazement. "Of course not. The hull's been treated with a chemical compound that tastes absolutely dreadful to their species but is completely harmless. Think of it as cosmic Brussels sprouts. And they're just dancing around it? They're investigating, exploring, making sure it's safe." Iris's voice had taken on the patient tone of a teacher explaining something to a particularly dense class. "Basic survival instinct. Before you trust something enough to let it feed you, you make absolutely certain it's not going to hurt you or your siblings." The holographic display shifted to show the interior of the Haven. Massive bay doors had opened along the ship's hull, revealing chambers filled with what looked like the galaxy's most elaborate playground equipment. But instead of swings and slides, there were structures designed specifically for creatures with 6 legs, acidic saliva, and a tendency to accidentally dissolve anything they got too excited about. "Phase 2, Iris announced. From the ship's external speakers came a sound that somehow managed to be both musical and completely alien. It was rhythmic, pulsing, with harmonics that seemed to resonate through the very fabric of space-time itself. The effect on the cubs was immediate and dramatic. Their chaotic dance around the ship suddenly became organized, synchronized. They began moving toward the open bay doors in formation. "What is that sound?" Crixville demanded, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "Kythara maternal feeding call," Iris replied. "We analyzed the acoustic patterns from your surveillance data. Took our linguistics team about 4 weeks to decode the basic communication structure." "You taught your ship to speak Kythara?" "We taught our ship to say dinner's ready in Kythara," she corrected. Completely different skill set. On the display, the first cub had reached one of the open bay doors. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, it hesitated, its massive head tilting as it examined the interior with what appeared to be genuine curiosity. Then, with a sound that could charitably be described as purring but was probably registering on seismic equipment in 3 different star systems, it entered the ship. The others followed like a parade of friendly nightmares. "Remarkable," breathed Yex-4. "They're actually boarding voluntarily." "Of course they are. They're hungry, they're curious, and someone just invited them to a meal that won't require them to accidentally dissolve anyone. What child could resist?" The hologram switched to internal cameras, showing the cubs exploring their new environment with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for birthday parties or successful planetary conquests. They pounced on the specially designed play equipment, wrestled with toys that looked suspiciously like miniature asteroids, and generally behaved like any group of youngsters presented with the galaxy's most expensive and dangerous playground. "Dr. Blackstone," Brick said slowly, "assuming this actually works, assuming you can contain and care for these creatures without them eating your entire crew, what happens next? You can't keep them on a ship, forever, no matter how large it is." "Oh, we're not planning to." Iris's smile had returned to maximum brightness. "The Haven is just temporary housing while we establish their permanent home." "Which is located where, exactly?" "Kepler 442c. The silence that followed was so profound it seemed to have gravitational pull. "The inhabited planet," Crixvel said eventually, his voice barely above a whisper. "You want to relocate world-destroying predators to a planet with 3 billion sentient inhabitants." "Well, not the inhabited continents," Iris said reasonably. "There's a beautiful landmass in the southern hemisphere that's completely uninhabited. Perfect climate, abundant wildlife, plenty of room for them to grow and develop properly. We've already been in extensive contact with the planetary government. They're surprisingly enthusiastic about the arrangement." "Enthusiastic about having apex predators as planetary neighbors?" "Enthusiastic about the protection they'll provide." Iris manipulated the hologram to show a detailed orbital map of Kepler 442c. "The planet's been experiencing significant problems with raiders from the Scorpion Nebula, pirates mostly looking for easy targets and valuable resources. Amazing how quickly criminal activity drops off when you have several dozen fully mature Kythara patrolling your star system." The implications of this statement settled over the bridge like a particularly dense fog of dread. "You're weaponizing them," Trixcole accused, his voice shaking with either rage or terror. "We're giving them a purpose," Iris corrected firmly. "Every species needs to feel useful, to have a role in the larger galactic community. Kythara are natural guardians. In their fully mature form, they're incredibly protective of their territory, but only toward genuine threats. Perfect for system defense and peacekeeping operations." She clicked off the hologram and faced the assembled crew members. "In 30 years, when these cubs reach full cognitive and physical maturity, they'll be the most effective peacekeeping force this galaxy has ever seen. They'll patrol trade routes, protect vulnerable colonies, and ensure that bullies think twice before picking on smaller species." "And if they decide we're the threat?" Crixvel asked quietly, voicing the question that had been haunting everyone's thoughts. Iris's expression softened slightly, revealing something almost vulnerable beneath her confident exterior. "Then we'll have failed them as guardians and teachers. And honestly, we'll deserve whatever consequences follow." The bridge remained silent for a long moment, the weight of possibility and responsibility settling over everyone present. "The decision," Crixvel said finally, "isn't mine to make. This will require authorization from Galactic Council Central Command." "Already approved," Iris replied, pulling out an official-looking datapad. "Admiral Vorth Prime signed off on the project 6 hours ago. Apparently, the Council decided that unconventional problems require unconventional solutions." She headed toward the bridge exit, pausing at the threshold to look back at the stunned crew. "You know what the real tragedy is?" she said softly. "Those cubs have been alone out there for months, probably terrified and confused, trying to make sense of a universe where everything they encounter either runs away or tries to kill them. They've been acting out because that's what children do when they're scared and don't understand what's expected of them. The bridge doors hissed open, but she didn't move. Every parent knows that the secret to raising good children isn't controlling what they are, she continued. It's helping them discover what they could become. As the doors closed behind her, the crew sat in contemplative silence, each wondering whether they had just witnessed the beginning of a new era of galactic cooperation or the most elaborate disaster in recorded history. Outside, the haven continued its gentle approach, filled with the sounds of cubs at play and the patient voices of their new human instructors, beginning the long, delicate work of transforming potential destroyers into protectors. In the years that followed, trade routes through the Kepler 442 system became the safest in known space. Pirate attacks dropped to zero. The cubs, now adolescents, had learned to distinguish between friends and threats, between play and protection. They had become exactly what Iris Blackstone had promised, guardians of the innocent and protectors of the vulnerable. But that, as they say, is another story entirely.